So I was in airborne, my third jump, and my main doesn't deploy. So I ripped my reserve, and my reserve was just sitting in my lap. And so I started throwing that, and so it catches a little bit of air. It's kind of dangling above me, not really doing a whole lot. And I was just bicycle kicking and just hoping that I wouldn't, become a memory.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kendall Tenney, and this is Operation Valor, where we hear the stories of veterans who have served our country and also suffered debilitating injuries along the way, and they've overcome those injuries with a new revolutionary procedure. Today, we're talking to Hilding, who was a biology chemistry teacher, a high school teacher, when during the pandemic, he decided that he wanted to become a Green Beret. So he joined the Army. He was on his way to becoming a Green Beret when, during one of the training jumps, his parachute failed to deploy.
I played college football for 5 years, and I did shot and disc up at Michigan Tech. And then when I finished that, I started teaching. I kind of went to a little town in the middle of nowhere, Manistee. Beautiful area, but definitely a lot different than being around a team 24/7. And so it was just, I started getting pretty lonely out there. And when COVID hit, it wasn't even like teaching anymore. It was all online. And most of my students weren't attending. So I just signed up, and the Army's something I'd always thought about doing. And then I wanted to be an officer, and the guy asked me if I'd ever heard of Green Berets. And I was like, well, I watched A-Team, and yeah. Pretty much the same thing. So, I got signed up. And so I made it all the way to pre-selection. I was out at land navigation, and that's when I started having my issues, and really started noticing that, I had some problems.
Yeah, because it started with a jump, right?
Yeah. So I was in airborne, my third jump. So my first two were a C-17, which is a huge doorway. I'm 6'2", 250, 260, right? And, I'm not particularly made for small doorways. And so I bumbled the exit. I think, you're moving 150 miles an hour, and my main doesn't deploy. So I'm looking for it. It's not doing its thing. So I ripped my reserve, and then my reserve is just sitting in my lap. And so I started throwing that. And then you're supposed to kick your legs, bicycle kick to help it deploy. And so it catches a little bit of air. It's kind of dangling above me, not really doing a whole lot. And I was just bicycle kicking, and just hoping, that I wouldn't, become a memory. And then it just lights out, and then next thing I know is some sergeant airborne grabbing me by the chest, sitting me up. He's like, "You all right?" It's like, "I'm happy to be alive, to be honest, Sergeant." Like, I was all kinds of shook up. But
so you do not have any recollection of the landing itself?
Not at all. No. And then I was pretty out of it for a while. They recycled me. It took me a week to go jump again, because I had to complete 3 jumps. They didn't count that jump.
I think they should count that jump personally.
I successfully navigated a very tense situation.
Yes.
I was hoping they just clap the wings on me and send me on my way after that, but no, I had to jump again. So that was probably the scariest thing I ever had to do is jump, not once, not twice, but 3 more times. So each time, my leg shaking. They put me a second guy for all those, because it's like Sergeant Airborne's could see that, I'm rattled, right?
Understandably so.
Yeah. So they put me a second guy so you can see out both doorways, but you're not facing the horizon. So it's a little bit easier. You just step and go.
So do you have any idea at what altitude your reserve chute finally deployed at least enough to save your life?
I was so wrapped up in just trying to clear the tangle. It would have been pretty low. For my estimation, is I was probably maybe a couple hundred feet in the air, like let's say maybe 300. When it started to open significantly, it was probably providing a little bit of drag. That's why I'm here. And then, you hit dirt, and there you are.
That's still a tremendous impact. If it's deploying at 300, 400 feet, you're coming in hard.
Yeah, and I was Hollywood, so luckily I didn't have any gear on me when I did that. So it was just my 250 pounds of meat just hitting the George turf. But yeah, so that was very, very lucky. I think part of it too is like they make you run, they make you do so much stuff. You're just great shape.
You survived it, and you didn't really know that you had suffered a pretty significant injury at that moment.
I just thought I had done something muscular or thrown out my back or done something. I was having intense burning in my legs, but I didn't want to lose my contract. So I was
Right.
just, and that's a huge fear. Right. And then my wife was waiting for me at Fort Bragg. So I had a date. So that was also on my mind there. It's just, I can't get in med hold. I gotta keep moving. So.
So you kept going. At what point did it just become very apparent and too much for you to press forward?
Yeah, so pre-selection, we made it land navigation. They took us out to Camp McCall, and Camp McCall is a lot of sand, and so like running on pavement stuff like that, I was fine because a lot of that's just back and forth, right? You're getting the vertical compression, which I think my hips and my legs were fine with something linear, but when you get in sand, it starts pushing out everywhere, and I went from being the top maybe 30 guys consistently to finish a ruck or a run to dropping back to second to last. And I mean, I was hurting. I had trouble walking. My leg wasn't working right. I don't know what's going on. And then when you're out at land nav, you have to keep the ruck on the whole time. So there's 45 pounds dry with water and then your food. So it's right about 100 pounds plus, maybe to 120, constantly pressing on you. And so I get to the second day of that, and I was like, look, I can't feel my left leg, right? I finished. So I spent a month going back and forth to Duke. Duke checks out my legs. I had 270-degree tears on both my labrums. I had torn my femoral ligament. I had a bunch of damage. I was starting to get like creeping necrosis in my left side, which was because it had impinged blood flow.
How frustrating was that to pursue that dream, to be very much on track to become a Green Beret, and then to get sidelined like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's very hard to bury your dreams, right? That's probably one of the hardest things because you wrap your identity a lot, man. I had wrapped a lot of who I was in being tough, right? I was a defensive lineman. I was one of the smallest defensive linemen in our league. And I started, 3-4 years. Right. So I was like, I'm a tough guy. I can tough out anything. Right. And it was like, man, I hit something that I just couldn't, my body just wasn't working. It was failing me. And I'm very thankful that my wife was there and saw me through some of the worst of it. It's like she could see, my son was born in between my surgeries. He might as well have been on the moon because I couldn't play with him when he was on the floor or do anything like that. I was really struggling at some points there. And it was very hard to go from, being able to run 10 miles to you got a walker and you're going to make it to the mailbox this week, right? Like that's a hard pill to swallow.
And even after the surgeries, the recovery from those surgeries, you're still suffering pain.
Yeah. They're like, they said, we got in there. It was worse than we thought, but we think we did something for you. I might have delayed hip replacements and stuff like that in the future for me. But I'm like, man, I'm still exhibiting the same symptoms. I still have a lot of these problems. I was like, man, what did I do this for? Maybe I could have just tried to tough it out. So that was really tough. And then I get out, I start going to school for molecular medicine at Drexel, which was online, and I start doing all this stuff. And I'd have these episodes, where something would happen in my back. I'd go pick something up or do whatever, and you get muscular spasms. So I would typically not be able to use my right side. And this even happened before I got out. My arm would curl up, and I could hardly stand up. And it didn't matter. They gave me a shot of Toradol in the glute and other drugs, muscle relaxants to try to help, and nothing really touched the pain from that. And I just have to wait three days to a week for it to subside. And so they do an MRI, and they're like, you have annular tears and annular fissures. And at the time, I'm a general biologist. I hadn't specialized in that at all. I was a biopsych and molecular. So I'm like, what does that mean? So I start learning that essentially you have the center part of your spine is the annulus. And when that leaks, it's like battery acid onto any tissue outside of it. And what I had, and I got pictures for you, you can pop up on there, is I had basically a hole in my last vertebrae, the L5, in that disc, and it's just leaking into my spinal column. And so
Holy
it was
cow.
inflaming my sciatic nerves. Like it would just pour on there. I would just, it's like I put my pain scale, like as out of this world, after that, because there's nothing worse than having your nerve endings basically burned. I had one episode that really prompted me to look for help anywhere, and I couldn't walk for 4 days. I could hardly breathe. Like I could barely use my diaphragm. It hurt so bad. My poor wife, 110 pounds, 5 foot, right? It's just trying to drag me because it was like I felt something, and then like 2 3 hours later, I'm just in agony, can hardly do anything. And so for 4 days, here she is with 2 kids at the time and like 6 months pregnant, just trying to get me along, feeding me water, doing whatever. And I'm so thankful that she was around and willing to do that, and she took great care of me. But I need to get that figured out. So I reached out. My friend George, he was a 30-year trauma surgeon, and he tells me you need to call this guy Ron Hillock. And I was like, well, I don't know if he can help me. He was the chief of surgery during Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I talked to Ron, and he tried to get me treated over at his spine clinic, but we kept on running into issues with the VA. And then, after a couple of months of this, he said, I'll pass you off to one of my buddies. They run Valor Spine. And the folks at Valor Spine have just been wonderful. I had so many issues trying to get the VA to pay for this procedure because what I needed is something to stop me from leaking that annular fluid and to reinflate my discs because they're starting to compress and all my lower vertebrae were ruptured, even getting into my mid thoracic. And they worked with me. They got it scheduled. The day before the procedure, I get this call, and I'm at school. I'm doing lectures. I get a call from the VA. It's this person from their insurance. They're like, you cannot get this procedure done. I was like, it's in the books. It's approved. It's tomorrow. And they're like, I'm sorry, but you cannot get this procedure. And so I call up Valor Spine, and they told me, show up anyway. We have the approval. We're going to do this procedure whether we get paid or not. And that to me really said something about their character. They're just trying to help. And so I'm very appreciative to that.
Tell us what you've experienced as far as the pain and everything you were enduring previous to the surgery and what you are experiencing now.
Yeah, so the biggest difference came on day one. I used like if I sat for any period of time, I'd start to get nerve pain symptoms because basically when you sit, I would open up that gap, and so I'd slowly start leaking. So after about 2 hours, I'd be holding my knees to my chest or doing something on the floor. Like I couldn't sit, I couldn't go visit family because they live downstate, which is about 8 hours, and I can only make it about 2. So now I can sit, which is hugely beneficial. I'm not taking a knee on the floor. I'm not doing those things. That's nice. I can sit. I can sleep through the night. I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. and start my day because the only thing that's shown to really help alleviate the lower back pain is movement. I can sleep until normal time, which is like 5 in the morning or whatever. When I get up, go to the gym, and I can run more coordinated. I don't feel that left leg dragging quite as much, which is very, very helpful. I don't get sciatic pains. I don't get any of that.
And now I understand you want to try to resume your effort to become a Green Beret.
Yeah, so I think that ship has sailed, but I do want to go back in. I would love to be an epidemiologist. There's 72 Delta, I think is the position, or Bravo. And since I got out, I've gotten my master's. I'm working on my PhD right now. I'm starting my dissertation in about 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. I'll be starting that. And if I could go back in some capacity, that would just be, would be wonderful. I want to use all the stuff that they gave me just to try to do something.
Have you spoken with them? Do they know about your intentions and as the door opened there?
So it's going to be tough. I have to get the Surgeon General to sign off on me. So we'll see. It all depends on how much I'm needed and how much the position that I choose to serve in is needed. And we'll see. The National Guard's my best bet.
Have you talked with any other veterans, any other active military who are suffering these kind of back problems or similar to what you did, about what you went through and how you found some relief?
I have, yeah. So I was a squad leader when they put me in. So I had like 12 guys that I was constantly in charge of, like herding cats. But that was for a unit of guys who all got hurt. And so the pipeline, it'll generate a lot of injuries because you're doing dangerous things. And so in there, I've reached out to guys who are in our unit and just said, hey, I've gotten this procedure. This procedure is available. You should try to get it. It's very low risk. There's not really much of a chance of infection at all. Because fibrin is antimicrobial, and then you're only doing a needle point injection. So it's super low risk and very high yield. You get 85% or more of people get pain relief. And so you're talking to somebody who's going to be in chronic pain for the rest of their life, what are you willing to risk? And I'll tell you, from sitting on the other side of that, is it's a lot. This is a great option.
And I'm so glad it's worked for you.
Grace of God, and it's been a lot different. You have a lot more patience. You can be more patient when you're not in constant pain, and you're more clear headed.
Pain really is something that can distract you in so many ways. And then it induces cortisol and adrenaline, which are not good for day to day living if you're getting heavy doses of it. So it is amazing how liberating it is to escape pain when you were subjected to it for a significant amount of time.
Yeah. And that's, it really, I wish more people knew about this procedure. I wish it was more widely available. But the recovery time on it is about 6 weeks. So I'm hitting weights again. I'm running again. If I was in and this was a treatment, it really makes you think, what if sometimes, right? Uh, but how much suffering could you just allay, just completely wipe off somebody's plate by just giving this to them as soon as they had an injury?
That's amazing. It really is. Well, listen, thanks so much for talking to me. And I wish you the very best moving forward. I hope you do get to re-enter and serve in the Army as you wish to. And I'm just very happy to hear that this went so well for you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you and seeing you and working with the folks at Dallas.